So, good afternoon. Narinig ba si Sir? Narinig niyo ba?
Sir, narinig ko.
Good. Bakit 14 lang kayo? Nasaan yung iba? Paki-chat nga yung iba yung classmates sa fumes and gas sa subject na to. Start tayo ng 110. Continue eh. Paki-chat yung mga classmates niyo. Yes, Alarcon. Anong problema? Bakit nagsusulat? Sir, ba't walang sound? Hindi pa ako nagsasalita kaya walang sound. Di ba sabi ko 110? Antayin natin yung classmates nyo iba. Po. Okay, so let's start the discussion. Good afternoon, everyone. This is your Sir Jirich Valdemoro, your OLC in Introduction to World Religions and Beliefs. Okay, so today we will be discussing the Buddhism. Okay, so in these religion profiles, our focus is on particular religious traditions with an emphasis on their internal diversity and the ways that the traditions are always evolving and changing. Okay, so though we hope these profiles provide helpful introductions, this format is a bit misleading in that it can reinforce the idea that religions exist and develop in isolation from other social and historical forces, including other religions. Okay? Diba, na-discuss na natin before yung ibang religions. Okay? So, for these religions being discussed, always remember the religious influences in particular sa social and their historical context. Okay? So for Buddhism, so let's start with the path of awakening. Okay, so in the 6th century BCE, a prince of India named Siddhartha Gautama is said to have given up his throne, left behind his family and his palace. Okay, he's a prince. Okay? So and set out into the forest to seek answers to the haunting questions of suffering, disease, old age, and death. Okay, so through his ardent search and his deep meditation, he gained great insight and he became known as the Buddha, or an honorific title meaning the enlightened one or the awakened one, and is considered by many to be one of the archetypal spiritual pathfinders of history. Okay? So within his own lifetime, the Buddha attracted a considerable following in India with this understanding of the suffering of living beings and his teachings about overcoming suffering through moral living, uh, meditation, and insight into reality. Okay? So some followed him in the path of renunciation and became monks, yung mga monghe and nuns. Okay, others remained as laity, learning from the Buddha's teaching, honoring the Buddha, and supporting the monastic community. Okay, so while Buddhism has its roots in India, reverence for the Buddha and adherence to his teaching spread throughout Asia and today the entire world. Okay. Prince Siddhartha renouncing the world. Okay, so what we know about the life of historical Buddha can be sketched from legends. Okay, one of the most beautiful literary renderings of the story is told by Ashvaghosha in the 1st century CE. Okay, Prince Siddhartha Gautama is said to have been born in the royal Shakya family, some say in the year 563 BCE. Okay, in the place called Lumbini, so which is located in the present day Nepal, so at the foothills of Himalaya. So at that time of his birth, so Seers foretold that he would either become a great king or an enlightened teacher. Okay, if the prince were to see the four passing insights, the old age, the sickness, the death, and a wandering ascetic. So he would renounce his royal life and seek enlightenment. So his father, the king, was determined that his son become a great ruler and try to shield Prince Siddhartha from these four realities of life. So however, at age 29, Siddhartha with his charioteer went out of the protected palace grounds and for the first time encountered suffering, which he understood to be an inevitable part of life. Okay, he saw four sights: a man bent with old age, a person afflicted with sickness, a corpse, and a wandering ascetic. So it was the fourth sight, that of a wandering ascetic, that filled Siddhartha with a sense of urgency to find out what lay at the root of human suffering. And becoming the Buddha, the way of meditation. So paano ba naging Buddha si Siddhartha? Okay, according to tradition, Siddhartha seated himself at the foot of a tree, okay, which has since been called the Bodhi tree. Okay, so the tree of enlightenment. So he vowed to sit beneath that tree until he had attained deep insight into suffering. Okay, deep insight. So as he sat through the night, a profound stillness settled upon his mind like that of a lake on a wilderness day. So this stillness enabled him to see ever more deeply and clearly into the cycle of grasping, clinging, and egotism found at the root of suffering. Okay? So pag sinabing meditation, nakapokus siya dun sa nakita niyang situation, which is yung suffering. Yun yung pinakauna niya kasing nakita nung lumabas siya sa palace. Okay? So uh, yun yung first step na ginawa niya. Nag-focus siya to meditate and to think about suffering. Okay, so the demon Mara rose to tempt him and to attack him with the arrows of passion. So desire, fear, pride, and thirst rose to challenge his clear concentration of mind. So merong kumontra. But Siddhartha placed his hand on the earth, uh, calling earth itself to witness his firm resolve. So when the morning star appeared, Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. Okay, literally the awakened one. So he had woken up to the nature of the changing world and the causes of suffering. So doon niya nakita yung cause ng suffering. So this state of awakening was also called nirvana, literally the blowing out of the fires of ego-centered attachment, which are the source of suffering. So si Siddhartha is called Shakyamuni Buddha, so the sage of Shakya clan. So kasi 'di ba he was born from the Shakya family. Okay? So to make clear that this awakening is not uniquely his, over time there have been other individuals who have awakened to the truth and gained enlightenment. So thereby becoming Buddhas. So among the most well-known and widely venerated are Amitabha or Amida, the Buddha, and Vairochana Buddha and Vaishya Guru, so better known as the Medicine Buddha. Okay, so indeed, sometimes Buddhas are depicted by the thousands, for the Buddha nature is true awakened nature of all beings. Okay, so marami din silang Buddha pero ang pinaka kilala or pinaka nauna is si Siddhartha. Okay? So it is said that out of great compassion, the newly enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha is set out to show others the path he had followed so they might set foot on that path as well. So after his awakening, the Buddha taught in the cities and villages of North India for some 45 years. So doon sila nag-start talaga ng teaching sa India. Okay, so next. The Dharma or the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so the Buddha's sermons, di ba nag-start sila sa India? So the Buddha's sermons and teachings pointed toward the true nature of the universe, so what is known within Buddhism as Dharma. Okay, so he gave his first sermon on the outskirts of the city of Varanasi at a deer park called Sarnath. So this first sermon presents an overview of suffering and the way out of suffering. Okay, so it is called the Four Noble Truths. So the Buddha is often described as a physician who first diagnoses an illness and then suggested medicine to cure the illness. So the Four Noble Truths follow this pattern. The first one is life involves suffering. Okay, so dukkha. So the illness that the Buddha diagnosed as the human condition is dukkha, a term often rendered in English as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Okay, Okay, so the Buddha spoke of three types of dukkha. So first, there is the ordinary suffering of mental and physical pain. Second, there is the suffering produced by change, the simple fact that all things, including happy feelings and blissful states, di ba? Naranasan nyo naman yun, are impermanent as is life itself. So the third one is there is a suffering produced by the failure to recognize that no, I stand alone. But everything and everyone, including what we call ourself, is conditioned and interdependent. Okay, so the second one is the suffering is caused by desire and grasping. Okay, so the Buddha saw that the impulse to crave, desire, or grasp something one uh, doesn't have is the principal cause of suffering. Okay, so because of the impermanence and continuous change of all that we call reality, the attempt to hold on to it is as doomed to frustration as the attempt to stake out a piece of a flowing river. Okay, so diba, continuous yung change eh. And then kapag ka hindi tayo nakakasabay doon sa change, doon na tayo nagkakaroon ng suffering. Okay? The third one is there is a way out of suffering. Okay, so this is good news of the Dharma. So it is possible to put an end to ego-centered desire, to put an end to dukkha and thus attain freedom from the perpetual sense of unsatisfactoriness. And then the fourth one is the way is the noble eightfold path. Okay, so to develop this freedom, one must practice the habits of ethical conduct, thought, and meditation that enable one to move along the path. So let me read the Noble Eightfold Path for you. Okay. So these habits include number one, right understanding. Okay. So really knowing, for example, that unwholesome acts and thoughts have consequences. So as do wholesome acts and thoughts. Okay, and number two, right intention. So recognizing that actions are shaped by habits of anger and self-centeredness or by habits of compassion, understanding, and love. Okay. Number three, the right speech. So recognizing the moral implication of speech or the truthfulness. Number four, right action, observing the five precepts at the foundation of all morality. So not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not clouding the mind with intoxicants. And number five, the right livelihood. So earning a living in ways that are consonant with the basic precepts. Then number six, right effort, cultivating this way of living with the attention, the patience, and the perseverance that it takes to cultivate a field. Okay, so number seven, right mindfulness. Okay, so developing presence of mind through the moment-to-moment awareness of meditation practice, including mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of walking, and mindfulness of bodily sensations. And last one is the right concentration. So developing the ability to bring the dispersed and distracted mind and heart to a center, a focus, and to see clearly through that focus in mind and heart. Okay, so those are the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, next one is the Sangha or the Buddhist community. Okay, so those who followed the Buddha came to be called the Sangha. Okay, so the community of monks and nuns. So those who became monks and nuns underwent an ordination ceremony of shaving their heads and donning robes to symbolize world renunciation. Diba? Shaving their heads. Kaya mapapansin niyo yung mga monghe, kalbo sila, di ba? And then nakasuot sila ng robes. So they entered into the homeless life of wandering monastics who settled down in monasteries only during the months of the rainy season. So for some, the Sangha is the whole community of Buddha's followers. So from the beginning, the Buddha's disciples include lay people who follow the Buddha's teachings but remained householders. So both the ordained and the laity follow the 5 precepts of basic ethics that are the foundation of religious life. In addition, a more extensive code of monastic rules that eventually developed to govern the conduct of ordained persons. Next, the 3 treasures. Okay, so the 3 treasures. So the 3 treasures of the Buddhist tradition are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Throughout the Buddhist world, Buddhists have these 3 treasures in common. To be a Buddhist means taking refuge in the 3 treasures, that is to put one's trust in them. Okay, so para maging Buddhist ka, kailangan mo maniwala dun sa 3 treasures. So Buddhists see as central to their lives the Buddha as well as enlightenment in general. So the teachings of those who are enlightened and the community that follows these teachings. Okay, so in the ancient uh, Pali language, the words of taking refuge are these. Okay, it's number one, Buddham Sharanam Gacham. Okay, Buddham Sharanam Gacham, which means I take refuge in the Buddha. And the number two, Dhammam Sharanam Gacham, I take refuge in the Dharma. And number three, Sangham Sharanam Gacham, I take refuge in the Sangha. Okay, so next, the expansion of, I'm sorry, the expansion of Buddhism. So in India, Buddhism began to wane in the 6th and 7th century CE. So when devotional Hinduism replaced Buddhism in the south and the Heptalite Huns invaded and sacked monasteries in the north. So by the 13th century, repeated invasions by the Turks ensured that Buddhism had virtually disappeared. So by this time, however, Buddhism was flourishing in many other parts of Asia. So as early as the 3rd century BCE, the Indian Emperor Ashoka, a convert to Buddhism, is said to have established the tradition on the island of Ceylon or the Sri Lanka. Okay, so by the 5th century CE, Buddhism had spread throughout what are now the Myanmar and Thailand. Ito na yung part ng Asia. Okay, so by the 13th century, one of the early Buddhist schools called the Theravada, the Way of the Elders, had become the dominant tradition of South and Southeast Asia. So as early as the 1st century CE, Buddhist monks made their way over the Silk Road through Central Asia to China. So by the 7th century, Buddhism had made a significant impact in China, interacting with Confucian and Taoist culture and ideas. So by this time, the tradition was also firmly established in Korea. Siyempre magkakadikit na kasi yung lugar na yan. In the 6th century, the Buddhism tradition was also introduced into Japan, where it developed in a milieu shaped by both Shinto and other the indigenous traditions. So this form Buddhism that first developed in India and later flourished in East Asia is known as the Mahayana or great vehicle. So later on, we will be discussing the Mahayana. Okay, so in the 8th century, Buddhism shaped by the tantric tradition of northeast India. So it spread to the high mountain plateau of Tibet. So there, in interaction with the indigenous Bon religion and with forms of Buddhism that had traveled to Tibet from East Asia, a distinctive and vibrant form of Mahayana Buddhism emerged known as Vajrayana. So the diamond vehicle. So these streams of Buddhisms are differentiated to some extent by their interpretations of Buddha and the Buddha's teachings. Okay, kasi 'di ba, paiba-iba ng lugar. And then meron na before pa sila makapasok sa lugar na 'yon, meron nang naunang religion. Okay, so the scriptures they hold in a special reverence and the variety of cultural expression they lend to Buddhist life and practice. So it would be a mistake, however, to identify these streams of tradition too rigidly with either specific ideas or specific geographical areas. So later on, ma-identify natin kung ano yung pinagkaiba nun. Okay, so next, ayan, Theravada, the way of the elders. So ito na yung first one, the elders. Okay, so the Theravada, literally the way of the elders, is the school of Buddhism most prominent today in the countries of Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka. So as the name suggests, it regards itself as the school most faithful to the teachings that have been passed down through the generations. So, in the United States, Theravada Buddhism has had its greatest growth since the 1960s when Euro-Americans started practicing Vipassana or the insight meditation. So at the same time, large numbers of immigrants from Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, and other traditional Theravadian countries traveled to United States. So the major characteristics of the Theravada can be summarized as follows. So the first one, the Pali Canon comprised of scriptures and commentaries written in the ancient Pali language. This is regarded as the most accurate source of teaching of the historical Buddha, yung Pali Canon. So while other schools have various other versions of the canon or the broader interpretation of what the canon includes, the Theravadians believe that the Pali Canon is definite. And number two, the human and historical Buddha, the spiritual pathfinder who lived 2,500 years ago in India is emphasized. So while other schools of Buddhism might focus on the teachings of other Buddha or venerate multiple Buddhas, the Theravadins see Shakyamuni Buddha as central. Si Siddhartha, siya yung Shakyamuni Buddha. And number three, the ideal spiritual model of Theravada Buddhism is the Arahant or Arat. The Arahants are literally worthy ones, are Buddhist practitioners who attain nirvana and have perfected their discipline such that defilements and desires are extinguished. Okay? So ito yung way of practice ng Theravada, okay, or the way of the elders. Okay, next, the Mahayana or the Great Vehicle. So by around 200 CE, the beginnings of a new stream of Buddhist tradition were visible within Indian Buddhism. Ito part naman ng India. Yung kanina, Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka. Ito naman part ng India. Okay, so this stream can be called the Mahayana, literally the Great Vehicle. So in general, this movement of monks, nuns, and laity can be characterized as follows. So the first one, as the name implies, the Mahayana came to think of itself as great, both in its interpretations of Buddha's teaching and in its openness to a broader group of people, especially lay people. So the word yana means vehicle or raft, which evokes the image of Buddhist teaching as a raft or a vehicle that can help one cross over the river of suffering to the other shore. Okay. So next, the Mahayana tradition is more flexible about the orthodoxy of scriptures regarding many new scriptures composed in the early century CE. as authentic teaching. So a number of new scriptures, the Lotus Sutra, the Ayatamsaka Sutra, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, and the Pure Island Sutra. So focus on teachings such as the emptiness of all phenomena, the importance Shuntaya, the importance of compassion or the karuna, and the universality of Buddha nature. Okay, so the third one is the ideal religious figure in the Mahayana tradition of the Bodhisattva. So an enlightened being engaged in helping others become free from suffering. So the Bodhisattva is motivated entirely by compassion and informed by deep wisdom. So Bodhisattva ideal is often contrasted with the monastic arahant ideal, characterized by some Mahayana schools as being directed towards self-liberation and thus too egotistical. Okay? So Mahayana Buddhism was the first major stream of Buddhism in the United States, brought by the Chinese and Japanese immigrants who arrived in the 19th century. Okay, so today, the two main expressions of the Mahayana tradition, the Zen and the Pure Land Buddhism, have both Asian American and Euro American practitioners. So in addition, Korean and Vietnamese immigrants introduced their culture expression of Mahayana Buddhism in late 20th century America and have steadily gained their own followings. Okay, next, the Varayana or the Diamond Bekel. So in the 7th century, a major movement within Mahayana Buddhism arose. So this stream of Buddhism called the Varayana is most prominent in Tibet and its surrounding regions, although forms of it are found in China and Japan. So the Varayana, literally the Diamond Bekel or the Thunderbolt Bekel, understands itself to be an esoteric form of Mahayana Buddhism with an